almost Decemberween time.
Yeah.
Get to hang out with my family. I still have to buy a present for my brother's girlfriend.
I still have to buy a gift for my brother.
You should probably get on that.
Welcome. You are entering a strange realm. A realm of what ifs. What if movies, television shows, and video games were better, worse, bizarrer, or downright different? What might they look like? Find out on today's episode of CineCasters.
Welcome back to CineCasters. This is the podcast where we watch movies and TV shows and then pitch them back to each other because we want to change them up, or sometimes because we just want to talk about them. I am Janglez the Strange, and today I'm joined by Alyssa.
Hello.
And today we are talking about the 2011 animated Christmas movie, Arthur Christmas.
It was interesting.
Not gonna lie, the first time I heard this title, I thought it was gonna be like the Arthur, the classic Arthur, like Aardvark Christmas.
Yeah.
I knew it was, like, when you had suggested it, I knew it wasn't that. But the first time I heard of this movie, I was like, oh, there's like a Christmas special for like Arthur, because like I grew up watching Arthur on TVO, because that's where I am at. But that was like the kids show in my part of Canada, the kids television network. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's not that. It is an animated, weird, very British movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is it a classic? Do people watch this one every year?
I've never heard of it before, like this year, so
okay.
I'm guessing not.
Okay. Like I think it's great that we're still doing animated movies and they're not by Disney. This one's DreamWorks, and DreamWorks has not been doing well lately. Kung Fu Panda and How to Train Your Dragon were sort of their big ones.
Yeah.
Because all the Shrek movies after 1, maybe 2, were not great or downright terrible. And I don't know, How to Train Your Dragon was great, but I don't know, DreamWorks not been doing great on the animation department, and they used to be a powerhouse. But like, I'm glad we're still getting animated movies, because Klaus is amazing. If anyone
I haven't actually watched it yet. I keep meaning to.
It's so good. I will probably watch it this year. I'm not one for like rewatching movies too much, every holiday, with some exceptions. Like there's some that just come up on TV, and some that people are just like, we gotta watch this one. So
yeah.
In my family, we do the Muppets Christmas Carol every year. That's a big one. And then whether or not anybody else cares, I always watch How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the 1966 one.
My mom does too. And actually, just like last night or the night before, she was like, oh, hey, Grandma got run over by the reindeer, so I'm like, we should watch it. And I'm like, yeah, maybe
not.
We just watched it last week.
And it was terrible.
Yeah.
So this one was interesting, because I'm always down to watch a new. I've never seen it. I think I want to start with goods this time. Which I know sounds ominous, but I do want to start with goods. So what are your
there's a lot that you're going to complain about later.
Yeah.
So
what are your goods? Oh, I see how this is. Do you want me to start with goods then?
I like Arthur as a character.
That's funny, because I don't.
I think that he's endearing.
Yeah, okay.
He's kind of like Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon.
He's like
we were just talking
early
about him.
Hiccup.
But like worse Hiccup, like just yeah. I
actually think Jay Baruchel would have done a better job playing playing Arthur.
I think you're right.
I like James McAvoy's like affect, like his accent and the way he like plays Arthur is fun. It doesn't sound like James McAvoy. It's like really, really well done. So I think that was great. The whole like, I'm a scaredy cat and I like to be at home and I'm never going to go on an adventure because I don't need that. And then he gets forced to go on an adventure. That's tried and old. I don't want that anymore.
It's been done 1,000 times before. Yeah.
I don't want that anymore. Arthur doesn't grow actually as a person. What's Arthur's arc in this story?
I don't know. I think the arc is in the other Santas.
Yeah, really. Arthur is our main character, but he doesn't really have an arc. He mostly is just like, I want to deliver this gift because I think that's important. And sure, he goes out on the adventure, but I don't know. He doesn't want to be Santa. That's not his goal. he isn't like a flawed character beyond like he's afraid of everything and then goes out and does something. So I guess he faces his fears, but it's not really all that well done.
And even by the end of it, like, he doesn't accept being Santa. He just is like, oh, okay. Like, everyone else is like, you're the Santa
You're the
now.
Santa now. And he's like...
Yeah.
I did like that the idea that Santa was a title that was passed on. Like, it's not one person.
Yeah.
I think that was cool to have, like, a generational kind of, like, take on Santa and see how, like, the family revolves around a business. Because you do get that kind of infighting around any kind of business. Anyone who's in a family business, hint, hint, will tell you that stuff like that does happen. Isn't that right, Alyssa?
Yes, it is.
Right? So I liked the idea of, like, succession and who has power and control and who does what, even though you're supposed to be family first. And then it stops being about what you're doing. Like, I thought that theme was nice, right?
Yeah.
It was like, we missed one child. Well, it's just one child. But that's what Christmas is. It's not about efficiency. It's not about delivering. It's not about what people think of you. It's if you miss one child, then that defeats the purpose of Christmas.
And not only, like, they might think of it as like it's a whatever percent margin of failure or whatever they called it.
Yeah.
Right? But you still ruined Christmas for that one kid.
Which makes me feel like if Santa ruins Christmas, like if one person doesn't get Christmas, then all of Christmas is ruined.
Yeah. That's kind of what it was. It's like if you miss a single kid, like that's it. You're done. That's just, you've ruined it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Although I will say that there's a couple points that are kind of undercut by that. At the very beginning when they're doing like the elf hit team present drop zone thing, there's a point where like one of the elves scans a kid and it comes up like naughty. And so the elf scans himself and then shoots presents into and I was like, yeah, but doesn't that sort of defeat the purpose of naughty and nice list? I think at this point it should just be like every kid in the world gets a Christmas gift, whether they're naughty or nice, doesn't matter. Like, it's okay if you're going to change like Santa being a generational thing, then it's okay to be like, we don't need a naughty and nice list anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it's old.
Yeah.
What did you think of this movie in terms of like we've talked a little bit about some goods, but like, I don't know. What did you think of this movie in terms of like the new things that it tried?
I mean, I actually really enjoyed that, like, despite the main character not having a real arc, that the three people around him had an arc.
You mean Steven,
like
Grand
Steven,
Santa,
Grand Santa, and what's his dad name?
Malcolm?
Malcolm, yeah. The fact that, like, those three were like, oh, they are Santas. They're like, you know, two have already been Santas and one's supposed to be Santa. And they don't fully understand the meaning of Christmas. And then they do. And I'm like, I actually really like that.
That's actually stronger. So here's the thing. I actually think that Steven and current Santa and Malcolm actually have better arcs. Sorry, Grand Santa, Steven, and current Santa have
they do.
better
they
arcs.
Have better, like, 100%.
They should have been the main characters, not Arthur. And the reason I think that is because while Arthur and Grand Santa and also Bryony's like the elf girl that's with them the whole time. She's like with them the whole time and doesn't have an arc. She's just there.
Yep.
That was weird. I don't like Arthur's arc or Bryony's arc or really Grand Santa's story. His arc is okay because they just travel around the world and don't do anything. Like, they literally are just, it's them getting lost, and that might be fun if it was, like, supposed to be an adventure, but they're in a race against time, and it's like, how incompetence is only funny for so long.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, by the end, when Steven shows up and he's got, like, the gift, the bicycle, and they're going to drop it off at Gwen's place, and they also are like, oh no, we're in the wrong Trello, we're in Mexico. It's like, it's not funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was also kind of like, oh, like father, like son.
But Steven's his brother.
Well, no, but it was the dad that put the
yeah. I see what you're saying. I don't know. It just seemed to me to be very like the humor was supposed to come from like the situation and like and I was like, but I'm not laughing. I'm not finding this funny. They're like, oh, we took a wrong turn and wound up in the Serengeti, and you're like, this isn't funny.
Yeah.
Like, also the lions' faces looked weird.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. To me, the real story was between the succession, of Steven wants to be Santa. Santa doesn't want to give it up. And the question of, should Steven be Santa? Does he really understand what Christmas is? And that's what makes Arthur like such a good candidate. So then Arthur needs an arc that revolves somehow around that conflict.
He needs to get more. I think that his arc could have been great if it was just like building confidence. If it was just that, like if there was no actual like succession struggle, if it was just him and Grand Santa and there was no Steve, and it was like, oh, here is, you know, Arthur learning how to be Santa, but also like getting over his fears and being confident enough to go and do all these things on his own, and competent enough as well.
Yeah, to me it seemed like a better way to do this arc would have been if all of them realized that it doesn't matter who Santa is. They kind of hinted this. It doesn't matter who Santa is between the four of them. It doesn't matter who Santa is. It matters as long as people believe in Santa. So who Santa is doesn't matter. And then whosever way is the right way to be Santa doesn't matter, as long as everyone like believes in Christmas and the power of Santa. That to me is like that. And that's why when they're like, well, Arthur's the new Santa, I was like, really? Because Arthur's still an incompetent prick. We never got over that. And
we never see him do Christmas the next year. He could be awful at it. He could be
awful at it. To me, it was like Arthur has to be the heart of Christmas, and then the current Santa is the represents like the image of Christmas. Grand Santa represents the tradition of Christmas, and Stephen represents the like operation of Christmas.
Yeah.
And all of them are Santa, quote unquote.
And if they all work together, it would be great.
Exactly. To me, that was where this was heading. And then it was like, Arthur's the new Santa. And I was like, wait, really? But Arthur delivered one gift to Stephen's many. Yes, Arthur understood why that gift was important, but it was one gift.
Yeah. It's like, oh, maybe we could just put Arthur in, you know, control of this one child's gift for the rest of her, you know, gift getting.
Yeah.
Like that would have been, I would have been okay with that.
I don't know. It's still like Arthur didn't do anything to prove that he wasn't a clumsy butt, you know, that we saw at the beginning of the movie. He didn't like become magically coordinated. He always had the heart, and that was important. And it is important, but it doesn't change anything for Arthur. It certainly showed Stephen the value of Christmas, but Stephen's not Santa. And it showed Grand Santa the importance of like why Christmas is important and not just the tradition of it, but he's not Santa. And it showed his dad, the current Santa, that maybe he like lost the meaning of Christmas, you know.
Yep.
And Arthur still had it, but it doesn't matter because he's not Santa. Arthur's Santa. Mm-hmm. And he's still incompetent.
Yep.
As heartwarming as it is, he's still incompetent.
Yep.
Yeah. I will say I didn't like that it took about 25 minutes to get to the point of the story.
Yep.
Like, there was a lot of setup where we had to introduce all the characters, and I understand that's important. And doing like the elf drop zone, like it's Christmas time, we gotta drop it all. I got 6 seconds, and then you gotta get out of here. Like that was cool, very visually entertaining. But we don't notice the missing bicycle until 25 minutes into the runtime, and that's our main conflict.
Yep.
The missing bicycle. Not matters of succession. Those are side plots because Stephen and Santa are our side characters, which means our main plot is Arthur's the main character, which means 25 minutes to get into your plot when you only have an hour and a half runtime. I think that's poor pacing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
I will say that the animation I thought was spectacular. It's really fluid. It looks great. The 3D modeling is great. Characters look really cool. The attention to detail in the animation I thought was really great. Like how each member of the Santa Claus family that's alive right now has like details, personal details on each of their clothing. So Stephen is very militaristic, so his Santa suit looks like it. And then current Santa looks very traditional, but it also has like some kind of classic soldier like flair to it where he wears a beret and whatnot, whereas Grand Santa's suit is like old school.
Yep.
Yeah. Even like Steven's design I thought was really cool. His goatee is a Christmas tree.
I thought that was really cool. I didn't actually notice that until like almost the end of the movie,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh,
His goatee is
that's
a Christmas
cool."
tree. Yeah, little things like that are really, really neat. But then this movie's just like casually sexist.
Yeah, okay, I'm glad you brought it up because I was going to. And like the whole time I was like, okay, clearly our Mrs. Claus is incredibly competent.
Yeah.
She should be the new Santa. Like,
Yeah, hell yeah.
She can run the ship on her own.
Yeah.
Like she knows how to do all this stuff, and it's just like, oh, whatever the wife does when the husband's out at work. And I'm like, excuse me?
But then also like later she's like sewing something, like classic. Like nothing wrong with sewing, but I'm just saying that's a classic sort of like quote unquote women's work. But she's like complaining that she had to fight off a polar bear.
Yeah.
And you're just like, hell yeah, like sew that stitch back up. This is a badass. But she doesn't do anything really until the end. And even at the end, she's still just a side character.
Yeah.
Like I honestly think this movie might have been really interesting if Arthur was female.
There was also a jibe. Grand Santa at one point said
jibe?
something about like teaching women
mean
how to read.
A jab or
A jab, not a jibe. I don't know. But
Whatever.
he said something about like teaching women how to read.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I was like, this is what? When was this released?
2011. I'm a little bit more okay with it as Grand Santa because Grand Santa's arc is about letting go of the past.
But if they had at least like, I don't know, called him out on that, like, oh, women know how to read.
Yeah,
like,
I do think so. Like, if that had been part of his arc, like, hang on a second. Like, yeah, we get that it was different in your day, but it's not that way now. And just because it was that way back in your day doesn't mean it's okay to say. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also think that this movie is very, very, like, elfist.
yes.
There's a couple points where all of the clauses are like, except for Arthur, are like, that's elf work.
Yeah.
And every time that happened, I was like, oh, not okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I
don't know. It's kind of problematic.
It's highly problematic. And because Grand Santa was my favorite character.
Yeah.
Because I just thought he was funny. But I couldn't outright say, like, out and out, he's the best character because he is so problematic.
Yeah.
And he's supposed to be Arthur's mentor character.
Yeah.
He's the Obi-Wan Kenobi, if you will.
I don't know if you would want him as an Obi-Wan Kenobi just because he's so crazy.
No, I'm going through like Jungian Jungian archetypes.
Yeah.
Right? So like he's the old wizard mentor character.
Yeah.
Which is an actual, like, Jung uses that kind of phraseology. So yeah, I don't know. It's the way it is. So problematic. But,
I don't know. I was really enjoying the movie, except for those occasional, like,
yeah,
stupid, like, just out of the blue, not needed. Just.
I thought it was very strange that everyone was British.
I agree.
I was pretty sure the North Pole's in Canada.
And then they talk about going through Canada.
Yeah,
I thought
Toronto.
That was kind of funny, where they're like, "Oh, nobody lives
Nobody
here."
lives
and it's
in
like there's
Canada.
an entire city that you just flew through.
Yeah, Toronto is like 5 million people in just the GTA.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do like jabs at Canada because we're good-natured and we can take it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's hilarious because, like, we have reindeer in Canada.
We do.
Yeah.
And I mean, outside of the GTA, there are cities, but they are small.
We have some pretty big cities.
Kind of, but only like within 5 hours of the GTA.
No. Vancouver, Montreal.
Oh yeah, true. I'm thinking
Quebec
like
City.
just the area that they went through.
Yeah. Well, it's because Toronto's the most well-known, right? Unless if you're talking about Canada, people are usually like Toronto or Vancouver, and Vancouver is because it's on the Atlantic. It's not. On the Pacific. It's not particularly winter-esque. Vancouver feels much more like Portland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it wasn't fully, I guess, relevant to the story and the route they were taking.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So
They could have gone through Quebec.
They could have gone through Quebec, but then they would have made fun of French Canadians, and the French Canadians would have got butthurt about it.
True.
Anyway, politics aside, so my basic problem is like I think Arthur and Bryony and Grand Santa need an actual plot while they're traveling around. So like I tried to fix that in my pitch. I think that there's some stuff that needs to be addressed. I did a lot of character changing. When they're stealing the reindeer, like, it's a funny kind of like side vignette, but it doesn't do anything for the plot.
It does for Grand Santa's plot, where he's like, he wants that picture of the 8 reindeer, and he
on
wants
the roof,
like
and that tradition
on the roof, and
the
it doesn't matter that one of the reindeer is like a metal reindeer.
Yeah, the problem I have with Grand Santa's arc is I think it's there, but I don't think it's very well outlined. And I think I would say, I would go so far as to say that you and I practice looking at story structure and character arcs, and that's why we know what Grand Santa's arc is.
Yeah.
I would say your average viewer might not have picked that out.
Yeah.
Which means that scene doesn't feel very effective, especially because Grand Santa's arc doesn't become apparent until later, when he says, like, we need all the reindeer. Like, the fact that, and this is why I'll say it, the fact that they go looking for the reindeer and just steal it off of like a tractor farm or at an inn or whatever, I was like, okay, but why?
Yeah.
Like, I'm watching this and I'm thinking, I know this is supposed to be funny, but why do they need this? The sleigh flies with less than 8 reindeer or 9 reindeer, however many it is with Rudolph. The sleigh flies with that many, and they've never established that they need all however many reindeer in order to fly, which means that, I mean, they've already established that because it flew without them.
Yep.
And the existence of magic dust, I guess, which means you wouldn't even need reindeer. You could probably just throw, like, a polar bear in there, a fucking
that
chihuahua.
may be a wild ride.
A chihuahua. Which I think would have been funnier if you were just like, well, it doesn't have to be a reindeer. Reindeer can be anything, and just throw some magic dust at, just like they did in the Serengeti when they threw magic dust and all the animals started floating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you could have had more fun with that. But because we don't find out until Grand Santa wants all the reindeer until much later, that scene doesn't feel very good. Like, it's not a very well done scene, little vignette.
And I think there's also a time where Grand Santa is like, oh, I only had 4 reindeer with me for doing whatever delivery he was doing.
Yeah,
like,
it's hard to say with Grand Santa as well, because a lot of, I think, what that character represents is sort of like, when I did it, I had to do it uphill both ways. Like
in
that kind
dad's
of
pajamas.
Yeah, in my dad's pajamas. And so I often wonder how reliable Grand Santa is as a narrator.
I feel like the only truth we actually get from him is once he starts kind of breaking down, and he's just like, how was I supposed to know it was the Cuban Missile Crisis?
Yeah. Well,
right. That was, I think, the most truthful time that we've seen him.
There is a certain amount of, like, traditional bravado, masculinity, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Fragile masculinity around, like, my day was harder because we didn't have all this newfangled technology and you suck.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but how much of that is actually true? You know what I mean? And how much of it, for all the clauses, how much of this was only plausible or possible because you had elves doing all of the work?
Yeah.
You know, if you're wondering where I'm gonna go with my pitch, I can give you some spoilers.
Something about free Dobby.
Yeah, talking about free Dobbies. Dobby is a free elf.
Yeah.
Yes, it's along those lines, but not quite. I'm falling back on a classic, the Janglez trope.
Okay.
Which is,
it should have been a TV show.
That is my catchphrase, but no.
No.
That is,
okay.
This is a stylistic and philosophical thematic trope that I use a lot.
You're gonna say it, and I'm gonna be like, oh, I should have known.
You should have known.
What is it?
Marxism.
Oh, I should have known.
Isn't
that what I was expecting from you last?
Yes, it was. That's
one?
why I was like, how are you not getting this?
How am I not getting this? Also, wouldn't it be like kind of strange to have like a full like TV series just for Christmas movies?
There have been animated Christmas series that have TV shows.
I've never heard of them.
Elfkin Christmas? Oh, I didn't say they were good.
Apparently not.
I'm certain there are like oh no, there's one that's like, it used to run on Teletoon all the time. So I'll have to look that up later, and I'll get back to you on that. It's like,
I mean, I'm curious to know, because I'm
Maybe
okay
it's called Santa
binging an
Clauses?
entire series in a
it's not
weekend.
good. It's just like an animated Christmas show. Santa Claus is Coming to Town. Is that what it was called? It was weird. Anyway, the last thing that I want to go over with this movie before I go off on a tangent about some unrelated TV show, at the end when the like entirety of the UN gets together and they're going to shoot down a UFO, that was unrealistic and just it felt unnecessary.
It was so bad.
Yeah. Like, I know it's supposed to be Grand Santa being like, I'm going down with the ship and we're saying goodbye to the old sleigh, out with the old, in with the new. But I was like, are we as human beings really that terrible? Like,
or like reactionary?
Yeah, really. I mean, I guess politicians are. Getting political. No. What I think would have been a better way to do that would have been if when they were like scanning or whatever, they were like, it looks like it has a heartbeat and a heat signature, and then they realize like it's Santa Claus, but don't tell anyone because they have to keep the secret of Santa Claus. Like, I would have been like, that's much more heartwarming, but they actually just fired a missile at fucking Santa Claus. Like,
I think with a whole, like a room full of, you know, assuming they're educated individuals, they could just sit there and go, it's like, looks like it's made of wood. It has a furry thing as the engine. Obviously, it's an alien.
Also, it's Christmas Eve.
Yeah. Like, it was just...
I know, but like, here's the thing.
How did they arrive to this conclusion?
Yeah, but from a storytelling... I'm not disagreeing with you. From a storytelling standpoint, how do you come back from we shot a missile too at Santa Claus? And the story just brushes right over that.
You don't come back from
How
that.
do you cannot come back from that?
You almost killed Christmas.
Yeah.
Literally.
And you're supposed to be like, that's why from a storytelling standpoint, sure, maybe they would have come to that conclusion and been like, it's not responding, we need to take defensive action. Fine. But from a storytelling standpoint, not from a realistic standpoint, from a storytelling standpoint, that I found gratuitous and hard to gloss over. Mm-hmm. Because if this is in fact a children's show, then we've talked about, you know, telling children's stories, how they need to come home. Then, you know, shooting a missile at Santa Claus, taking military action against Santa Claus is, you have made your villains. They are your villains now.
Yep.
And you cannot come back from that.
The entire government, the world government,
all of the world's governments are now your villains. And how do you come back from that? Because they were the ones who took offensive action.
Yeah.
Yeah. Offensive action, not offensive action. Whatever.
Yeah.
We should get into pitches.
I'd like to go first.
Okay. Is there a reason you'd like to go first?
Because I feel like mine is not strong. Like, it's not awful.
Okay.
But it's not strong.
All right.
It was kind of like I had this idea and then I was like, I just need to follow through with it. And if it's not good, then whatever, I followed through.
I just figured I would go first because I already teased mine was about Marxism. But you go.
You actually basically teased what mine was going to be already anyways.
Female Arthur?
No.
Because I actually, about it. I think if I could make a quick pitch off the top of my head, I actually think like Santa's always been male. Mm-hmm. So what if Santa had like two children, Stephen, and then, I don't know, Ariana. I need a name that started with an AR, right? But Ariana's not allowed to be Santa because Santa's always a dude. So then the rules of succession are already in place. And then we have like, then you have Grand Santa's arc being like, well, you can't have a girl Santa because that's against tradition. Steven already thinks he's going to be Santa. You know what I mean? But we can have Arthur or Ariana be Santa because of course she can be, because she believes she has the heart, right?
Yeah.
It's the same. It's literally the same story.
Puts down the
except you change the dimension because you have this female. And I know people are going to roll their eyes and be like, oh, but it's this, you know, female. Yeah, but it changes this story in particular. I would still rewrite a bunch of the parts around like them traveling around the world in a sleigh because those are dumb and slow and stupid. But already you add another dimension to this story simply by changing the gender of your main character.
Yep.
All right, hit me.
Okay, so when I first read the description of this film to you, it says, at Santa Claus's super secret toy making facility, Mr. Claus entrusts his son, Arthur, to carry out an ultra important Christmas mission.
He doesn't.
He doesn't, right? And that whole time while I was watching this movie, I was like, this movie doesn't match its description, and it's really bothering me.
So you need to write a strongly worded message to someone at Netflix.
Obviously I do.
I'm assuming
but-
you watched it on Netflix.
I did, yeah. So I'm like, okay, no, I can't. This isn't connecting. And it was really bothering me. So I was like, okay, I have to make it so that Santa actually does entrust his son with a mission.
I like that the description has now become more Holy Scripture than the movie itself.
It did. And because I was kind of expecting something completely different, especially after we met Steve, I was expecting like your classic Hallmark kind of movie where you've got this like person who's just like, I'm just here to do my business in the spirit of Halloween.
What is this, Nightmare Before Christmas?
The spirit of Christmas
Yeah.
is like, you know, whatever, it doesn't matter as long as the gifts get out and whatever.
I am businessman. I have come to buy your store and turn it into oil resort.
Yeah. So I was like, it just needs to be like the classic like Hallmark thing, but actually happening in Santa Claus's family, because why not? So I actually only have
about that.
Probably. So I only actually have 3 main characters. It's I just called them Steve and Dad Santa and Grand Santa, just to keep them kind of organized in my brain.
Yep.
And that's it. It's just those 3.
Yeah.
Because there were way too many characters, I think, in this movie, just in my opinion. Okay, so we start with the rundown of Santa, or of the first Christmas. Steve is like the backline, making sure things are getting done, and then we kind of like, see the elf thing where they do the like giant mission worldwide. Basically the same kind of general intros to what we got in this movie. But then we actually just kind of like fast forward to the next year without seeing like, oh, the grandpa or Dad Santa's like speech about like, oh, I couldn't have done it this year without whatever, right? We just skipped that. We didn't need that, again, in my humble opinion. And so we just skip straight to next year, and now it is both Steve and Dad Santa, I'm just gonna call him Dad, Steve and Dad, out together for this year as like the transitionary year, because it is following tradition, and so that's what they're doing, because they did talk about that in the movie, and I liked that idea that was like tradition and that Steve hadn't done that yet, so couldn't be Santa yet. So they basically get the full Christmas experience done, same as last year, except with a few other hitches because Steve wasn't at the home base. So at one point the dad almost gets seen while Steve is in a different house, and then Steve accidentally puts the wrong gift down, and they don't really realize until like down the line in a different city or something. The elves at home are having like a little panic because they're just like scrambling without Steve, without their main guy being at home. So like all in all, they managed to get through the night until they get home, and Grand Santa is missing.
Ooh.
So they watch through like the footage, because obviously it's like a facility, so they have cameras. And they find out that Grand Santa found a lost present and then snuck out in the old sleigh. So they also know, they like after seeing it, I don't know, they do some detective work and figure out who the child is that's missing their toy. And so they kind of like argue back and forth, like, oh, should they try finding Grand Santa to make sure the present gets there? Should they just hang out and see if Grand Santa manages the delivery on his own? The elves manage to pick up a signal, and then Steve and Dad head out to go save Grand Santa, because I don't know, he found himself in the desert. Just why not?
Why not?
So they get there, and Dad Santa's just like, you go get Grand Santa, I'll wait here with the S1. I liked the S1, it looked cool.
It looks like the Enterprise.
It does, but it's like shaped like a sleigh, which was really cool. So then as soon as Steve is clear of the S1, Dad Santa takes off.
Oh, damn.
And he like calls them, and he's just like, hey, this is tradition, but I figured Grand Santa wants one last hurrah, so you can deliver the last present with him.
Aw.
In the old sleigh. And so Steve is obviously like grumpy about this because he's just like, oh, my S1, you better not scratch it. And, you know, whatever. It's just one present. How hard could it be? Even like this old hunk of junk can get wherever. So Steve ends up corralling Grand Santa back into the sleigh. And then Grand Santa doesn't want to actually start the sleigh for him or get it going. So Steve is like trying to get it going himself. And the whole time they're also arguing about like reputation and getting the glory for like the lost present, and how like Steve is apparently ruining Christmas.
You're ruining Christmas.
Yeah. And so, yeah, they have that big argument. Steve manages to get the sleigh going, but then it's just like not that fun to him because there's no, you know, fancy tech screens, and I feel like a boomer trying to be like darn fangled screens and knobs and buttons and stuff.
Oh, now you sound like someone from the greatest generation, not the silent generation, not the boomers, the generation before them.
Right. Where it's just like, it's just boring to him because it's not complicated. And he's like, and it's cold, and this is so much nicer when we're in the S1 because it's all closed off with heaters and like central heating. I don't know. And Grand Santa is just like, okay, whatever, you don't need to drive, just go sit in the back. So he takes the reins and says something about showing Steve like the real way to be Santa. And he just takes them on like an insane joyride. And the whole time Steve is like, we have to get back on course. Like this is a mission. We have to bring the toy to the child, right? Where am I? So yeah, he takes them on that insane flight. They don't leave a path of destruction or draw attention because that's what Santa's good at, is not being seen.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of
dumb,
stupid. Yeah. But they're just driving like an absolute nut. So, Steve actually ends up at one point enjoying the ride. But he's like, okay, we can fool around after we finish the mission. So he takes the reins back and he pushes the reindeer to go as fast as they can. So they end up arguing about the speed that they're driving now, because now Grand Santa is not having fun just because they're going in a straight line. It's not magical to him.
Yeah.
So then I think this would be a good place for them to like crash, maybe like right as soon as they get over the Atlantic or something. They crash, and then Grand Santa actually like does that whole I wanted the glory and the picture and the 8 reindeer with their hooves on the roof and whatever. But then he also says something about missing the fun he had being out on the sleigh, and Steve is like, but we have a mission, like we have to do this. And the whole time Dad Santa is just watching from the S1. He's just been following them because why not? And he's just shaking his head, and he calls them and it's just like, you guys are both ruining Christmas. Just get the present to the kid. And then, yeah, they continue arguing about like, no, it's the other person that's ruining Christmas, and my way is the right way, and my way is the efficient way. And Dad Santa just hangs up. He's just like, I'm not listening to this. So Steve and Grand Santa try to make up. Steve ends up helping to fix the sleigh, and then Grand Santa actually like shows him how to properly like get it started and flying. And they're like, okay, this is okay. We're bonding.
Yay.
So they're on their way. They get to the house and they're getting ready to set the present down. But then they start arguing about who is putting the present down.
Yeah.
And at one point they're like, oh, it's just one kid, who cares, put it down. And then, you know, but it has to be Santa, and I'm the new Santa. And then Grand Santa's like, oh, but your way ruins Christmas. It's lacking the magic and blah, blah, blah. Whereas to Grand Santa, we already heard that the magic is the glory of being the one to, you know, land on the roof and whatever.
Do the thing.
And then Steve is like, oh, well, your old way can't keep up with the changing world. And Grand Santa's like, oh, it doesn't matter because my way got us here. And then Steve has like a revelation about what his father said earlier. And he's just like, yeah, we're both ruining Christmas right now. Both of us. Like, it doesn't matter who Santa is. Santa is who brings joy. And we worked together and we had fun and we bonded and we are able to bring this present to this child. And we're bringing the joy together. So we're both Santa, so let's do it together.
Aww.
And yeah, and then they do, and then Grand Santa gets to hang out in retirement with Dad.
Nice. Yeah.
That's why I was like, it's not the greatest start. You teased it for me.
It's pretty good. It's good enough. Like, it does exactly what it's supposed to. This doesn't have to be like a revolutionary story, right? Christmas stories usually aren't, so.
I just want it to be less problematic and less busy.
Yeah.
There was too much going on.
There's too much of nothing going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mine is pretty revolutionary, but that's a pun because I'll get around to that.
Okay.
So my intro happens the same way with Steven has automated things. There's like the drop zone elf thing, like Go Team Christmas, Operation Go Santa. And Arthur's happy with the way things are because he feels connected to the kids through letters. Like, he wasn't designated to the letter department. He like wants to be there. Yep. And Grand Santa feels like things have changed from when he was Santa. So Grand Santa, in mind, he's like less conceited and he takes more of this mentor role. So we're introduced to a shy and misunderstood Arthur who's like hunting down a misplaced letter. That's how we get the introduction to him. Everyone thinks Arthur is a bit odd as he keeps to himself, and he's not like, they think he's gloomy, but he's not. He's not like goth or like leave me alone, I'm different kind of thing. He's just introverted. And he connects to people through the letters he writes and receives. That's the way he do things. When the bicycle gets left behind, and Steven is upset, and so is Santa. But Steven's like, we did everything right. There's no way that we could have missed. Like, it just happens. Like, it's just a margin of error that was always an inevitability. And there's nothing we can do about it because there's just such a large operation. So unfortunately, this year, one kid got missed. There was always that inevitability. And Santa Claus is like, well, I'm like Santa. I'm the power and the image, and I want to know if there's anything we can do. And Steven crunches the numbers and he's like, I'm sorry, there's nothing. And Santa goes like, well, we did everything we could, and pats himself on the back, and they leave. But Arthur is like, well, hang on a second. Like I have the letter, and he finds the letter, not the one that was missing, but he finds a letter from Gwen. And he's like, I read the letters. I know why they connect. And so he reads it. This is when we get the reading, because I don't want the reading in the beginning. It doesn't make sense yet. And he really connects with the letter. And that's why he's worked in letters. And he realizes, like, I have to deliver the letters. Like, I have to deliver this bicycle. And he takes the letter and goes to Grand Santa for help. And Grand Santa is pissed that a gift was missed because he never missed one.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is not okay. And he's like, Steven might be efficient, but he misses the point of Christmas. So Grand Santa gets Bryony the elf to assist. And the two of them, like, he straps them to the sleigh. And he's not going to go with them. It's just the two of them. But he basically, when he picks Bryony, he's like, this is elf work. You have to do this. She doesn't want to go, but she basically has to because she's given orders by a clause. So she has to. And they set off on the classic sleigh. Steven is still ticked off about the fact that Santa overlooked him, and he doesn't want, like, Santa doesn't want to retire. And he begins talking to some of the elves that are his friends. Like, you know, I think it's time that Santa retires. And like, I was really hoping this was going to be the year, but then he looked me over again. Santa, on the other hand, is like, he's like the symbolic power. He like looks like Santa. He's all about what the kids believe in and whatnot. And he's very charismatic, and he's talking at a great time. And Grand Santa accidentally lets slip at Santa's after party that Steven wants to see Santa to retire so that he can take over being Santa. And Santa and his elf friends are like, well, hang on a second. Like, he can't do that. I'm the real Santa. Like, yeah, I'm the real Santa. I have all the power and what the kids believe in. Like, Steven might be good at his job, but he doesn't have that Santa je ne sais quoi, right? So Steven and Santa begin like talking and arguing with themselves, and the elves start to take sides. Like, who's backing Santa up, right? Steven does the work, and sort of he represents the labor and the power of everything that the that goes into Christmas, but Santa is what the kids believe in. He's the figurehead, the real symbol of what Christmas means. Meanwhile, Arthur is out there delivering presents with Bryony. This way I would do it is that Grand Santa's using the strife, like the internal strife, as a way to keep them from noticing that Arthur has left. In my version, I needed Gwen to be further away so that it was like a bit like the North. England is not that far from the North Pole.
Yeah.
So I needed them to have like a bit further away. So I made Gwen live in New Zealand because it's in the southern hemisphere and it's really, really far down there.
That's very far. Yeah.
So it doesn't matter, traveling from Toronto to England is far because you travel along, like you're traveling latitudinally, right?
Yep.
Whereas traveling from the North Pole to England is not that far because you can travel longitudinally.
Yep. Right?
So that's why. So I was like, we got to travel longitudinally all the way, basically to the southern hemisphere to get to New Zealand. So Arthur is sort of like, not really, he doesn't dislike Christmas, but he tries to keep to himself, and he sees himself as like, he doesn't have Stephen's grandiose plans or organization skills, and he doesn't have his father's magnanimous charisma or charm, but he still loves Christmas, and he cares about people. And Bryony's sort of like pissed that she got stuck with him, but as the two of them like connect, and there's not them getting lost, but there's just sort of, they have to make their way there. And we see them like slowly starting to connect as she sees like Arthur's different. He's just introverted, right? So he connects with people. It just takes him longer and it's harder for him to do. Meanwhile, the elves of the North Pole are really starting to create a rift. They're essentially coming down to blows over who should Santa retire or not and Stephen take over. And Grand Santa basically steps in at this point. He's like, I actually use this all to distract you from the fact that Arthur snuck out to get the present to Gwen because that's what's important here. And Stephen actually, he's like, oh, I know Arthur can't deliver that present, and reveals that he purposefully made sure a gift would be left behind so that people would stop believing in the power of Santa and his dad would be forced to retire so he could take over and no one would miss a gift.
Wow.
Yeah. So he purposely undermined the system. And Santa is like, whoa, that's a dick move. You can't just do that. Like, Christmas is a whole operation. That's why we do these things.
And
right?
that poor,
like, that's messed up.
Kid who gets missed.
Yeah, right? And that's like, this is why you don't understand Christmas. It's all about the influence and the image. That's why, that's why you don't care. But it turns out like Santa himself doesn't actually care about one child getting missed. He's actually more upset that Stephen fucked him over. And all the elves are basically like, wait, what do you mean you don't care if one elf gets missed or one child gets missed? And they fucking riot.
Yeah.
Like against the whole Santa family.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, Bryony and Arthur like on a race against the sun. So there's a city in New Zealand called Gisborne. And Gisborne is called first to see the sun because it's the first city in the Commonwealth that the sun used to rise on. And so I just thought it would be really, really kind of like fun if it was in Gisborne, New Zealand, first to see the sun, so that Bryony and Arthur are racing against the sun to get to
literally racing against the sun.
Racing against the sun to get to Gisborne. And that's sort of their arc. And we sort of see, and we can have this cool thing with time zones and really awesome.
Yeah. So
Grand Santa tries to calm things down at the North Pole, but the elves are basically seizing the means of production. And Grand Santa is also like, he doesn't appreciate the elves because he's like old and traditional. And that was what I was trying to set up earlier with Bryony. And he's like, this is messed up. And he's kind of racist, but a product of his times. Not that that's okay, but just that's why he does what he does it this way.
Yeah.
But that just kind of messes things up more. So finally the elves basically like take over and they're like resetting the system. They're like, we got to get this kid this gift. And they see Arthur and Bryony out delivering their present, and they see how Bryony and Arthur interact and how Arthur doesn't treat Bryony like an elf. He treats her like a friend. He's like connected with her and he doesn't give her orders. The two of them just sort of work together.
Yeah.
Right. Even though he's the claws. Arthur and Bryony manage to beat the sun and deliver the present, and the elves watch, and we can see that Arthur understands people because he connects with their feelings, and even though it's in letters, he still connects with people in his own way, and he sees the value of every individual rather than like the belief like his father or like the big picture like his brother. And when he returns home, the elves basically vote Steven and Santa out. And they're like, Arthur has to be the next Santa. And Arthur's like, well, I don't really want it. I just was comfortable like looking after letters and connecting with people. And they're like, that's exactly why you have to be Santa. And we'll continue to look after logistics as long as there's somebody who cares about each and every individual child, just how Arthur cared about Bryony and Arthur cared about Gwen, and how you've always cared about each letter you've received. And that's the end.
Aww.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, me too. Also, just like elves rioting.
I like that idea too. I think that's pretty fun.
There was and I would play it comedically, like the elves rioting, but there's a scene in there where they basically like do self-destruct on Christmas. And it doesn't do anything for the plot at all. And it's kind of redundant, but that's where I got the idea from. I was just like, I would love to see all these tiny little elves just riot. And I think it would be hilarious, but it would also be like, yeah, there's a serious reason for it. They believe in the value of Christmas, and the people who are leading them no longer do. And the idea behind Santa Claus and Stephen fighting was that they were basically like manipulating the elves, not overtly, but because the elves were like just something that they always had, that the elves were doing the fighting for them. But when they band together for the value of Christmas, we can see that Arthur is actually the real Santa because he values everyone and doesn't see the elves just as a means to get what they want, the way Santa and Grand Santa and Stephen did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm all about
I like
that.
yours.
I'm all about that Marxist Christmas. Karl, I want Karl Marx for the next Santa Claus. He looks like Santa Claus, so.
He kind of does. I like that this pitch and the last pitch that you did for Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. I like that they like are just really profound, I guess. Where it's like, what if elves rioted against Santa? What if Santa was on trial for manslaughter? This is just so like. It's like surreal.
Yeah. So I've been going back and watching or listening to the CineMasters Classic episodes before I upload them. I just go through them, right? And so I've been listening to them, and some of the stuff that we had last year was great, but because of that, I've now been just like thinking, how can I change pitches around Christmas? Because Christmas stories are generally pretty much the same every time. Even like my favorites aren't like hugely amazing different stories, right? The Grinch is amazing. I love the Grinch, and I will say that it's old now, but A Christmas Carol was pretty revolutionary at the time.
Yeah.
When it was written, that's secular Christmas to me. Is the Christmas Carol? That's what it means, secular Christmas, which I think is awesome. And like newer shows like Claus. I will sing the praises of Claus for decades because I really love that movie, but it doesn't really do anything new apart from the animation, which is gorgeous.
Yeah.
But that doesn't, so I'm just trying to like, how can we change the stories we tell around Christmas while still having them be about Christmas?
Yeah.
That's all. Yeah.
I like that. No, I really like that though. Like it's
profound.
It's almost like it adds a whole new level of like wonder to it. I like it.
Okay, thanks. That's a lot to keep up with, I guess, because I still have one more to do with Nate until the Christmas season is over. So great. I'm sure I'll be able to keep this going. Pressure's
Sorry,
on.
I didn't mean to like raise the bar there.
That's fair. Where can people find you?
You can find me at twitch.tv/AlyssaLou with 3 O's, or you can find my creative stuff at Alyssa Rose Handmade on Instagram.
You can find our band Robot Philosopher anywhere you listen to dope music. You can also find our other channel, the CineCasters Ultimate Timeline, for more scripted content, like this long and the short of it, and this is the thing. And you can find more awesome podcasts right here, so stick around, because there's more being uploaded, and there's the classics on Friday, and I got tons in the backlog and tons more ideas. So thanks for hanging out with us.
Bye.